the madhouse.
Cheers to episode 6.
Cheers.
Episode 6.
Episode 6. Lemon White Claw. I know, tough.
Tap water.
Whew.
Wow, soft. Dr. McGillicuddy's.
Again.
Oh, Bert. 3 weeks in a row.
All right. We are recording episode 6 at 6:47 p.m. on Monday, February 22nd, 2021. And both Michigan and Michigan State basketball won important road games this weekend. Woo! So good week for everyone.
Pretty good.
Decent.
Could've
Tuesday was not good.
Could have been better.
Could have definitely
Could've.
been better.
So last week, we started with Michigan State basketball. Speaking of Michigan State basketball, we'll talk to them later in the show as well with an interview with MLive's Michigan State basketball reporter, Kyle Austin. So good stuff there. Stick around to the middle of the show for that. This week, we are starting with Michigan because the game of the college basketball season thus far was played on Sunday at Value City Arena. That's what they call it.
Yes.
One of the worst arena names in probably college basketball. Get the obvious out of the way. I don't really feel like talking about the Rutgers game earlier in the week. I'm not sure anyone does. It was just a sloppy game of basketball. Pretty gross. And we need to give the people what they want. That's what this podcast does, is we give the people what they want. So we're going to talk about number 3 Michigan winning 92-87 at number 4 Ohio State on Sunday as 2-point road underdogs. Michigan hadn't won at Ohio State since 2014, which was also the last time they won the Big Ten regular season outright. Something interesting going on there. And I know last week I had said that Wisconsin was the most impressive win they had of the season after 23-game layoff. And, just when I crown that as the most impressive game, they go and totally outdo themselves with a new most impressive game of the season, beating Ohio State. So I'll start big picture here about the game, then let you guys hop in. And then after that, we'll come back to like the nitty-gritty X's and O's of it because I have some things to talk about because it was, again, the best college basketball game of the season. So first and foremost, like a broken record, best college basketball game of the season. That's what I wrote down in all caps. There was high-level talent on the floor, NBA players left and right, great shot making, great energy in the game, and that overall passion that you get from a rivalry game. Some big moments that stood out in the game to me. Eli Brooks in the first 3 minutes was crucial because it always feels like on those road environments, again, no fans, but you don't want to take an early deficit on the road. And Ohio State came out firing, making shots. And if it wasn't for Eli Brooks making 2 big threes to start the game, which is not the guy you think is going to be knocking down shots from the jump, Michigan would have found themselves down 7-2, 7-3, maybe 9-3, 9-0 potentially. I mean, he made 2 big threes out of the stretch, and he had been very slow offensively the last few games. I believe it was Bill Raftery that said the stat. He was 3 of 16 or 3 of 19 shooting in general coming into that game over his last few, and makes 2 huge threes to start the game just to keep that flow going and keep them in the game right there. So they can play their game and don't freak out, get down double digits on the road. Fast forward extremely, because the rest of that first half was just back and forth city, bucket after bucket, exchanging. It was one of those games where you felt like if you didn't score on a possession, you were going to lose the game. It was one of those games where it was just nerve-wracking the whole time. You felt like you were behind 20 points if you didn't score on one possession. So with 9 minutes left to go in the game, second half, Michigan was down by 4. And Shawnee Brown comes in, and his defensive energy helps force 2 turnovers that were part of a 6-0 run for Michigan, which is funny to say a 6-0 run. Usually that's nothing to write home about. But in that game, it was so crucial to take the lead by 2 at that point. Didn't let it get any more of a lead than that. And then again, Shawnee Brown a couple minutes later, grabbing 2 huge offensive rebounds on the same possession and then making the putback layup to keep their momentum going as well. And then lastly, the last play that really stood out to me was Hunter Dickinson finally getting the best of E.J. Liddell, who had an incredible game, but blocked Liddell with about a minute to go to really put the nail in the coffin and get that defensive stand that both teams were looking for the whole game. So with that being said, I just talked forever. You guys hop in here with any big picture stuff from the game.
I'll start with Ohio State side of the game.
Okay.
Justice Suing. What was he doing in the late stages of that game? Dribbled off his foot, turnover, led to a Michigan bucket. Behind the back pass to absolutely nobody, turnover, bucket for Michigan. I just don't know why Chris Holtmann left him in after the first dribble off his foot And then he did that. And honestly, if I was an Ohio State fan, I'm just throwing the blame all on him right away because they just blew it. Second, now back to the Michigan side, dummy hot from 3. 10 of 13 in the first half, ridiculous. And the fact that Ohio State was up 1 at half or up 2.
Michigan was up 2.
Michigan up 2. The fact that Ohio State was in the game when Michigan had 30 points off threes in the first half is honestly a testament to how good Ohio State is for staying in that game.
Mm-hmm.
But huge win for Michigan.
Huge.
So
best win of the year. Best college game of the year.
I'll give them props for that. It was a great basketball game to watch, even as a Michigan State fan.
Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was fun to watch what good offense looks like, I would say. How each team, like Grant, you said, how if you missed a basket or you missed a shot, it felt like you were going to lose the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the intensity and like how do you want to say it? The momentum shifts in the game were so little, but it mattered the most. But kind of sucks for the Big Ten that these guys don't play again, or do they? Do they play the last game of the year?
No.
Well, we played them last game of the year.
Yeah, that was the only
so
meeting.
So hopefully, well, I wouldn't say hopefully, but they probably will play each other in the Big Ten tournament. So hopefully everything's just like that, I would say. Big picture-wise, 2 offensive good teams. I mean, they each shot 53% from the field. 40. Michigan shot 47 from 3. Ohio State shot 50% from 3. And the biggest difference, I would say, the small stats is the free throw line. Mm-hmm. Other than that, everything's kind of the same. So it comes down to those small turnovers or those small possessions that can change a close game like this.
Justice suing.
What about the free throw line? Because I forgot to get in the box score, but I have a feeling I know Ohio State was better just from watching the game, right? It seemed like they did not miss like a single free throw.
Ohio State was better. They were 12 for 13, but Michigan made 7 more than them. Michigan was 19 for 24. So, I mean, there's 7 points right there you could look back.
Michigan, crazy in that game with the little things. They survived a trip to the line where Livers missed 2 free throws. I remember we were watching that, Alex. I was like, that is not good and not characteristic of him, but they still pulled it out. I want to touch on Evan's point about how much of a shame it is that these teams for now are only scheduled to play once. I would love to watch a 7-game series between these 2 teams, like NBA style, like play 7. That would be such a good series back and forth over the course. So hopefully, like Evan said, they either get a Big Ten tournament matchup or maybe a Final Four matchup, something crazy. That would be, hold on to your seats. So now for the box score observations. Not a huge stats podcast, but sometimes you have to be when the game lives up to it. So on the Ohio State side, what stuck out to me was Justin Arns, 0 points in this game. He averages only 7 points per game, but those 7 points mean a lot in a 5-point game. And he usually has 2 threes per game. I know he at least took 1 3. I think he may have took another, missed both, did not make a 3. So Michigan was clamping him down from the outside, not giving him any space. And I noticed most of the time they would put Mike Smith on him, being the smallest defender, and just sticking to him on the 3-point line as much as he could. So great defense there. And like your guy that you said, the bad goat, the turkey, Justin Suing. Only 6 points in this game when he usually averages 10 points per game. And also, like you said, had 2 critical turnovers. The play you mentioned, really, honestly, it was like a double screen, and Liddell turned his back, and Suing had to have been trying to throw him behind the back at the 3-point line to EJ Liddell, which is crazy to try to do. And it's almost like he threw it, and everyone around him just kind of paused and almost looked at each other like, what? This ball's rolling. And then Livers finally saw it and went and obviously made the layup on the other end. On Michigan's side, Michigan was so balanced in this game, which was the big discrepancy between the 2 teams. Ohio State was obviously carried by Liddell and Dwayne Washington, their point guard, who was insane in this game. But Michigan had 5 guys in double figures, with Dickinson leading the way with 22. More just nitty-gritty things I saw. Michigan is such a good passing basketball team. The guys that stood out that I wrote was Dickinson. His cross-court skip passes when he's doubled down low that either lead to that 3. He only had 2 assists, so a lot of times they don't lead to the 3. They lead to the 1 more. That then makes the 3. Michigan is great at those 1 more passes. And then Mike Smith, the way he does the pick and roll is unbelievable. Sometimes he throws passes that you think have no prayer of getting there, especially with Dickinson. They have such a good chemistry, which is crazy to think that their first year playing together at all, and they already have this chemistry. And then in general, what I love about Michigan is they're so good at throwing passes over the top of people's heads instead of like a sloppy low bounce pass to Dickinson. Next time you watch them in this upcoming stretch, just notice how like especially Wagner and Livers will just fire overhead passes over their defender quickly to Dickinson down low, so he's catching it at his chin instead of having to bend down and grab it and then go up. As my grandpa always says, the bounce pass is the worst pass in basketball. Maybe he got in Coach Howard's ear and gave him that message, but it just seems like Michigan is not throwing that many bounce passes. The last thing I'll say before I throw it to you guys again is the other thing that makes Michigan great on the wings, especially Livers and Wagner, is when they catch a pass, their pump or their hesitate and go after catching the ball is a like lethal move against defenses. They're very good, almost Villanova-esque at either pump faking or catching it on the move or jabbing one way and just instantly going to the hole. And then especially Wagner is very good at finding the pass back out to the wing for a three as opposed to forcing up like a floater or anything. That move just catches defenses off guard so much. And like Evan said, it's because they shoot so well from three that you have to respect that initial pump fake. Anything else in the game you guys saw in the X's and O's?
I think you covered it, Todd McShay, in basketball.
I did talk about it.
Good job.
I mean, I would say going into the game, I had confidence on Ohio State to win the game because I thought Dickinson was going to struggle in the fact that he would have to guard Lydell at the 3-point line. Mm-hmm. So I thought they weren't going to be able to play him the 29 minutes that he played. I thought it would be smaller than that. But I think in the second half, I think Ohio State kind of got away from that of using Lydell out towards the perimeter to open up the offense for them. But on Michigan side of the offense, it was – I mean, both teams shot 53%, so how good defensively were each teams. But – I would say more so Ohio State's defense was worse because Michigan was able to either high pick and roll or be able to dribble drive, not score the basket, but just the floor spacing, then be able to kick it out for an open shot or an open three. I feel like that was the main difference in the second half for sure. It was, I can't remember your point guard's name.
Mike Smith.
He was, yes. So he was running the offense and he was either on fast break, a high pick and roll, or he would just break down his defender. Because late in the game, I think it was a close game. There was probably like a minute or so left. He got by Washington, and he missed a layup, but the defender came weak side to help, and Dickinson had a putback dunk to get up like 6 or 7. So that kind of like sealed the game. So I would say that. Like I said, I have floor spacing, and the offensive rebounds were kind of the same. It was, I think, 10-7. But I feel like Michigan's offensive rebounds were more important to them. You touched on it earlier, how Brown came off and had 2 offensive rebounds. Yeah. Like that possession can change a game where it's a 5-point game. So I feel like Michigan's offensive rebounds were more important. And then, like you touched on, it's one of the best college basketball games of the year. Just shame we only get to see them once in the regular season. Hopefully we get to see them in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah. And one thing we can all relate to, I know, as fans, this was one of those games, and I'm sure you guys can think of one off the top of your head. This is one of those games where you want to watch it again. Like I watched like a 20-minute highlight tape again of the game cut up, and then you're just on social media for hours after the game, just wanting every single Instagram post, every single tweet, every single locker room video. Like you just want to soak it all in because like those are the games that make being a fan so fun. And I think that's something like every fan can relate to that they've had for their team, and that was definitely one of those games. The only critique I have about this whole game is that the uniform matchup was so atrocious. With these two teams, like, how is Michigan not in maize, and how is Ohio State not either in a white or a red? The fact that they went a gross, because Ohio State has some awesome uniforms. They have like a script Buckeyes across the chest. They wore like a stacked Ohio State between the numbers in gray, and Michigan wore their blues, which are by far their worst uniforms. It's like, can we not just, I mean, even if they went mustard and ketchup, like I like that. Just go maize and red or maize and white. It would look so much better. So only critique if I have to pick on something.
The butt sweat on Ohio State's players through the gray uniforms.
So bad, bro.
Terrible.
Yeah, so bad. I mean, they were just sweating left and right. Yeah, get those guys out of gray forever. Because like you can't have a coach dressed so sharp like Chris Holtmann and send your guys out there just sweating through those dirty gray uniforms. Oh, but great game. Unfortunately, we can't talk about it the whole show. We do have to move on to a different part of the show. And the next part of college basketball will be Michigan State, who played Purdue and Indiana this week. I watched the Purdue game. I didn't see really any Indiana game except for highlights. So as I typically tend to do, since like week 1 when we talked about State, I will toss it to you guys to pick apart the games as you wish. Spend as much time as you want either, or dive into what you saw.
So the Purdue game, I'll just say shooting woes continued. It wasn't the worst game I've seen Michigan State play, so
I'd hope not.
As crazy as that sounds, that's a plus.
Yep.
No answer for Travion Williams again. So
Ever.
That's 2 games in a row against Purdue
Concerning.
where Izzo decided he would rather lose on the 3, and he just absolutely dominated Michigan State inside. I think he had 30 or so points. So he was abusing Michigan State's big man.
As 21 Savage said, a lot.
Yeah. And then the only other thing I wrote for that game, because I like to look forward to the win that we had this weekend,
Right.
but some of the lineups down the stretch were confusing, but I guess I can see it. I thought Julius Marble should probably have played more down the stretch in that game. He was one of our only offensive answers. I think he had 10 points in less than 10 minutes. But he didn't play like the last 6 minutes or so of the game. Joey Hauser in that game also. Terrible, terrible turnovers at the end of the game. That was the game out of reach at that point, probably, but still just inexcusable turnovers from Hauser. He's becoming a big issue, I would say. I'll get more on the next game, though.
Sounds like there's some coaching questions you're kind of
eyebrow
raising there.
We'll get to the next.
Not to poke the bear or anything.
I'll let Evan talk about Purdue first.
So I've written down, it was probably the highlight of Twitter after the game was the substitutions and why certain post players weren't playing certain minutes. And it frustrates me that some fans don't – I don't want to call them out. I don't want to call them
I said
something I shouldn't call them. But like to understand why like some post players are getting minutes is because either foul troubles, minutes, an injury. And so that's why like you saw Sissoko play in the first half because we had foul trouble. And so those were his minutes within the first half. Did he play well? Yes. Did Williams abuse him down low? Absolutely. But he abused almost everybody on the team. And so the biggest problem after the game was the people in uproar about the post-player rotations down the stretch where Kithier was playing more than Marble. But I think people forget during the game, Marble tapped himself out because he tweaked his shin, I don't know, got hurt. So he tapped himself out, was tired. And so when you tap yourself out, usually, I don't know how all coaches do it, you get to go back in when you're ready. However, Kithier was in there, and I felt he was, I wouldn't say doing a better job, but he's just more experienced when guarding post players. And so I think the coaches wanted Kithier in there. Is he the offensive force? No, but he's in there for his defense. He's experienced at that. And let's not forget all the fans were upset that Sissoko and Marble weren't playing more in the second half. Kithier finished the Purdue game with a +3 in plus minus. So if you want to argue that, then you have no logic behind it because you're just going off your eye test of what you watched. They're like, oh, Sissoko played 12 minutes and scored all the points in the first half. Well, he was lucky to even get those minutes.
Wow. I would just say I can see the Sissoko side where he's definitely not nearly experienced enough to be playing in the final 7 minutes of a close game.
Watch your mouth.
He's not ready yet. But I think now the Marble tapping himself out, that's one thing. If it was because he's tired, I assume eventually he was ready to go back in. And yes, Kithier was probably doing a better job on defense, but it felt in a game where Michigan State was struggling to score and Marble was scoring, it might have been reason to go with that option versus the defensive option. When was Kithier doing better on Williams? Yes, but was he still getting buckets every other time? Yes. So I would have liked to see Marble down the stretch. I can see why Sissoko didn't play that much in the second half.
This is a really dumb question.
Yeah.
But I want to get it out because I got to be honest with the viewers and not ask you guys off the show. Plus minus, that's just simply like you're out there and your team scored 5 points while you're out there and gave up 2, you're a +3.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. There's no other like division or
That simple.
Okay, let's move on from that. Anything else about the Purdue game before Indiana? Very fascinating debate or just talk, I think, for that segment as an outside observer of like why I think Evan laid it out perfectly, why minutes go where they should, and then Alex also had a good counterpoint of like, well, sometimes your heart can still want to see Mr. Marble out there instead because he's getting buckets, quote unquote.
He was. But I can understand both sides. So Indiana game.
Who's yours? Who's your daddy? Michigan State's her daddy. Aaron Henry's her daddy.
Another terrible start to a basketball game for Michigan State.
Really bad. I did see that.
I don't know what the problem with this team is in terms of starting the game. Evan told me earlier today they've been turning it over 50% of the time in the first 10 minutes of each game.
That was just the Indiana game. It was roughly around 44% of the possessions they were turning the ball over in the first 12 minutes of the basketball game.
Which is miserable.
Holy
to think
stats.
about. However, things turned around after the garbage start. Once again, no post defense. Is it Trace or Tracy?
Tracy Jackson Davis.
Jackson Davis dominated
JD.
inside. Now, to Evan's point about Kithier, when Kithier came in off the bench, he was much better on defense than anybody else on the team against him. So there's a Kithier plug. He's good on defense. Other points I wrote down: Rockets' best game of the season. Didn't fill it up on the score sheet, but 32 minutes and 0 turnovers. I think that is a massive plus for this team that turns the ball over 40 times a game. It feels
That's not the Rocket Watts. I think it's fun though. The Rocket Watts, it's fun. It's just high flying, making plays, also turning it over.
6 points down the stretch that were big too.
I saw him hit a big 3.
Saucy 3.
Yes.
Bad offensive possession, but big 3. And I think Dockich said on the broadcast,
He said this is a terrible possession.
bad possession that might turn out good, and then went bang.
Yep.
Yeah.
Another thing I wrote is Hauser unplayable at this point.
Whoa.
Did he have an outrageously bad game compared to all of his other games? Yes, but he's been bad for a while. The turnovers are a huge problem. He cannot stop turning. I think he had 6 turnovers in this game. His defense is also garbage. He can't guard a soul.
3 turnovers.
Jeez. Six in the last 2 games.
Oh my God.
6 in the last 2 games, sorry.
Sorry, Joey.
And he can't play defense. And if he's not making shots and he's turning the ball over and he's playing no defense, might want to go to a different lineup, which Tom did, which leads me to my next point. Watts, Langford, Brown, Henry, and Kithier. That lineup, statistically, 2.28 points per possession. The leader this year is Iowa at 1.22, which is the best since 2002.
I'm bad with decimal points.
Well, that's irrelevant. But that just means that lineup, small sample size, but they were extremely efficient against Indiana, including they were 0.60 points per possession when they were playing defense. So they were playing great defense and great offense. Would like to see that lineup more. I'm sure Evan will talk about how it's not always going to work, but I liked that lineup. And then the last thing, Izzo used half the number of lineups he's typically been using. So he usually uses about 24 lineups a game. He used only 12 in this game.
So he listens to the show.
He did. He must have listened to our podcast, and it helped the players get in more of a rhythm. Gabe Brown had 14 points. When he plays a lot of minutes, he seems to do a lot better.
So credit to us for, we get 30% of that win? Yeah. I think we said a couple weeks ago, 13 people, 12 people playing is probably too much on this team. But then people were injured, blah, blah. So, Evan, I'll lead into you. It's so do you agree with Alex that Michigan State has basically uncovered the Golden State Warriors small ball lineup that helped them win the NBA Finals, and Michigan State is going to go on an unprecedented tournament run and probably cut down the banners in April?
No, they did not uncover anything. Here we go with the Twitter thing. I hate it, but people are going to see Gabe Brown playing so well. They're going to see Aaron Henry. Obviously, Aaron Henry led us to his victory, played 40 minutes. But they're going to see Gabe Brown, Langford, Rocket, and Aaron Henry all on the court at the same time. And they're going to ask, well, why can't we do this every single game? Well, it doesn't work that way. I'm sorry to tell you, it doesn't work that way. Indiana, defensive matchups or offensive matchups, we were able to play this way. They had one post player, and their second or their number 4 or their power forward, Henry was able to guard him. So that allowed Gabe Brown to be on the court. We didn't have to have a second post player or a power forward. So that, like Alex said, the better offensive lineup was able to play more. And people are going to probably complain when Gabe Brown probably doesn't play as much in the Illinois game or in the Michigan game because of it's all about matchups. And do I want to see Gabe Brown play more? Yes. Does he still need to fix the defensive side of the ball? Yes. But I can't argue with him scoring 14 points and hitting multiple big threes during the game. I'd like him to be more physical.
Sounds like good things to me.
I wrote down Henry. Obviously, he was the highlight of the game with 27 points. 8 for 9 from the free throw, which is surprisingly well. And I hate to say this, how much I don't like Dan Dokic. I didn't watch the game on mute, but just listening to him, he made some valid points during the game that I actually shrugged my shoulders. I was like, yeah, I agree with you. Like Alex said, to start the game, came off to a slow start. And he made a point like Indiana's out Michigan State. And it seemed to me how I wrote it down. I said, Indiana came for a fight. Michigan State came just to play basketball. I thought the season was over the first 8 minutes of the game. I did. I was like, well, this is the team that we get. This is it. And then obviously the second half scoring 52 points in the second half is going to help.
Whew. Small ball lineup. They found it.
Yeah. The Warriors.
Gabe Brown if he's actually 6'8", that's not that bad for a power forward, but like Evan said, his weight is not,
he's not physical. He avoids contact at all times.
I think
unless he's dunking.
Like Evan's point about the Michigan game is, because that's the team I know best, is like him guarding Franz Wagner is a big weight discrepancy if it were to, drives to the basket in a post-up. Like that's where he's going to struggle. Now, like I said, it can work against some teams, but I guess overall good that Michigan State found something to build on going into their massive matchup that is, we're recording on Monday, but you're listening to this today if you listen to it on Tuesday. So we're going to preview actually the Illinois game a little bit, which we normally don't get to do. I have a couple of points on this, so I'll hop in here and then let you guys go. I guess first and foremost, massive game. I would say biggest game of the season to this point, as in the Simpsons movie so far. Biggest game of the season so far. My question that I wrote, how do they stop Kofi Cockburn after giving up career highs to Jackson Davis and also Travion Williams destroying them twice? I don't know how they're going to do that. So it's almost like you just got to pencil in 30 points for Kofi and then figure out how you can win from there. Be interesting to see if Coach Izzo goes to not double teaming again, because Illinois has some 3-point snipers on the perimeter. Iowa can shoot. Trent Frazier can shoot. What I will say based on what I watched in the Indiana game, you can't take anything away from Michigan State. It still just seems, though, like Michigan State getting a lot of their buckets is like pulling teeth at the dentist office. Like they're tough ISO possessions. As no one probably that listens to this watched Butler last year, but that was Butler's offense. Kamar Gbalwin, ISO, top of the key, just go make a play. That's what Aaron Henry's doing so much of the game. And I just don't think that strategy is going to work as good against Illinois' defense. They are, we talked about the KenPom numbers. I was going to kind of let it slide, but now that I mentioned it, I kind of put myself in a pretzel and I dug myself a hole and I can't get out of it. Michigan is no longer top 10 in both after the Ohio State game. So my whole theory is it's going to influx. We're now 7th. No, not we. Michigan is now 7th in offense and 11th in defense. Ooh. But Illinois is 8th in offense and 9th in defense, or vice versa. So they are now in that elite stat level. So that defense is going to be much better on the perimeter, not letting Aaron Henry play bully ball to the rim. So they're going to have to figure something out and not just rely on ISO. That's my thoughts going into the game. What would your guys' be your keys to the game?
Keys to the game.
Number one. Or just emotions of the game. How nervous are you going to be?
Well, my emotions of the game, with the 6 games we have left, Michigan State has left, not we. I think this is the most difficult game because of the defense Illinois can play. Plus, it's a must-win at home. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure. I'm curious to see how Michigan State responds to that. I don't know. I guess we really don't know. I would like to see if Izzo's going to go with the Iowa approach where he doubled Luka Garza in the second game and held him to a season low of like 8 points. But Iowa lit it up from 3, killed Michigan State.
WAP.
So I think, just let Kofi Cockburn score 30.
People forget that WAP was a basketball phrase before Cardi B and Meg Thee Stallion stole it for an inappropriate song that I've never listened to.
Keys. Michigan State, limit their turnovers. They have to hit shots. They don't do that often.
Really?
So let's hit some threes, play that Golden State Warriors small ball lineup and let it ride. And if it's working, stick with it.
Gabe Brown equals Andre Iguodala finals MVP.
Matty Sissoko, 40 minutes.
You actually think he should play that much?
No, it was a complete joke.
Oh, okay.
On Devin.
You guys are Kithier guys, for better or worse.
Whoever's
huge Tommy fan. Huge Tommy fan. I wrote down it's Henry versus Dosunmu. I mean, if Henry's your best defender, you put him on Dosunmu and you let the game go. and then you just live with whoever else is scoring. Because we watched the Iowa game getting destroyed. I don't think Tom will ever double another post player just the rest of the season. I don't think he will.
After that abuse.
Watching the Indiana game, did I hate seeing whatever Tristan Jackson,
Tracy,
butchering his name,
Jackson Davis. He's
there you go. Score 34 points, but if you let him score, just don't let anybody else score. Dosumo's probably going to get at least 20 points. That's for a fact.
Yeah, for sure.
But in my case, looking at the last 5 games for Illinois, what Illinois team is going to show up? They went in overtime to Indiana. They went in overtime to Nebraska. They only beat Northwestern by 7. So what Illinois team is going to show up? And then on the other side, what Michigan State team is going to show up? Is it going to be the second half Indiana team, or is it going to be the first half Indiana team? Because if it's the first half, we don't have a chance. Dosumo will take this over and win Big Ten Player of the Year. I do like that this is back-to-back away games for Illinois. So I don't have like a key point. Like this key points can be the reason to win. You can always just say, hey, score more points than the other team and we'll win the game.
Right. Simple as that.
20% chance.
It's a massive game, honestly. It stinks that we hadn't started this podcast pre-basketball season, so Alex could have got this fire take he had that Rocket Watts would be a better player this year than Io DeSumo. So this is a massive game in that take. Massive game. I think Rocket would have scored 40 and guard Io all game and hold him to 10 for that even to remotely tip the scales at all.
He had his best game of the season last year at Illinois. So just
people don't
just
forget,
watch out for that.
Apparently.
He went crazy in that game.
Okay, so the last college basketball point of the day is the rescheduling of games. So both teams, Michigan and Michigan State, had some games added to their schedules. Not a huge surprise, but just interesting. Michigan will be making up their game with Illinois, so all you Illinois fans can shut up on Twitter and stop saying that they play no one and they're ducking Illinois. We're tired of that with Ohio State fans in football. And they are making up the second game with Michigan State. And then Michigan State is making up the game with Michigan and also making up another game with Indiana. My thoughts on it from the Michigan side, brutal stretch for Michigan only having one day off in between the set of games of Iowa and Indiana and Illinois and MSU. They're basically just recovery days and like a little bit of film breakdown. I'm not really sure what you're going to do. If we're going to spin zone, be like happy-go-lucky, I guess it helps you prep for tournament time when you only get a day off and have to play again. So, woohoo. Let's just hope nobody gets hurt in those games. And if you drop 2 of them, I'm not going to be upset. I know it's a loser mentality. I know I made excuse. Oh, hand up. I was wrong about the Rutgers game, so hand up there. I'm not going to try to build in pre-excuses. It might seem like I'm doing that because I kind of am. But, you just got to roll with the punches. Michigan State side of the schedule.
Helps their tournament chances, gives them more chances to win games.
Nice.
So that's good. Cool, you get Michigan twice if it's competitive.
Really unique, yeah.
But
first time ever, probably.
Biggest benefit is just helping the tournament chances. 3 games in each week.
More reps for the small ball dream team.
Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. So they'll get after it.
Any day that starts in T, Michigan State's playing basketball.
I think I would say my biggest takeaway is Michigan State and Michigan playing twice in 4 days?
Yeah.
The 4th and 7th of March. It's gonna be fun to see the first game, and then it's gonna be fun to see the second game, how both teams adjust, what kind of play or what kind of action you're gonna get in the second game.
Evan,
who's gonna make the adjustments to win the ball game? Because that last game could come down to Michigan State getting into the tournament or not.
Yeah. How chippy, Evan, do you think that second game is going to be? I wrote it's going to be an electric factory. It's going to be chippy.
I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a little bit chippy, but nobody on Michigan or Michigan State stands out as a huge trash talker, up in your face trash talker. There's no Draymond Green running out there.
Dickinson does online.
Shawnee Brown is scary.
What's his name? Resdakis isn't out there.
No. Stauskas shushing the crowd and blowing kisses. No Draymond, like you said. Dickinson does talk smack online. He's a big Instagram commenter, so there might be some bounties on his head.
He likes hiding behind the computer screen. No problem.
So get ready for when if you need to laugh. I mean, when he blocked EJ Liddell, he did a little flex with his shoulders. I can't do it because I'm sitting down. And if you go watch that video, it's hilarious. So he might give one of those, maybe towards Izzo. I know Shaundi hit a 3 and turned around and said something to Ohio State's bench. So.
He's scary.
It's going to get chippy game 2. It has to. There's 2 days off. It's going to get chippy. Regardless if they're obviously, if they're closer games, if the first one's really close, second game is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
We should just enjoy it.
For sure.
Regardless of the outcome. Even if Michigan loses, just enjoy it, like I said. Like, it's just fun.
Yeah, we see what you're doing.
Corner of the end zone for Braylon, up in the air. Touchdown, Michigan!
The Spartans win again! The Spartans win again!
All right, enough of college basketball. College football. If you were tired of Michigan State talk, well, sucks. Turn it off or skip to the next segment. Because I don't know if people know this, but we do put the timestamps in every single week. So if you really don't want to listen to us talk about a certain topic, just jump to the timestamp of the other one. That's how timestamps work. You can just hop around topics as you please. So college football, we had to follow up on it because it directly affects both teams. The VanSumeren brothers follow-up. I didn't really know who VanSumeren was. Like, not even being mean, like, before, like, the news of the transfer was happening. Like, I kind of remember a name because he had to play a couple 7 tackles last year. Now it feels like he's just all over everyone's brains. We got to talk him back-to-back weeks on the podcast. I mean, what a world. So he transferred to Michigan State. If you were living under a rock, that's where he chose to go. And it really stirred up some action on, what was it, Friday or Saturday? Saturday, like before the Michigan basketball game, really. People were talking about
right
it.
At noon, right at tip-off.
Buzzing, little news dump before the biggest basketball game of the year. I'll just say it's wild to see someone go to a rival after playing for the other school in college. Recruits, Rayshon Benny is one thing because they never actually went to that school yet. Like, you can forgive that more in your brain, in my opinion. And if there's one thing this news did is unleashed a ton of opinions on Twitter and social media. It is another layer, too, that he is from Michigan, grew up in the state of Michigan, so he has a better feel for the rivalry than I would say, like, if a kid from Alabama came to Michigan and then decided to go to Michigan State, it'd be a little bit different. Like, this person lives and breathes and knows the rivalry. Like I said, opinions are flying. I'll give my take a little bit first without giving away too much. I mean, I fundamentally think in this case that everything is fair. Like, you shouldn't be trashing on the player, but if you're going to... They're adults now. If you're going to make the decision that you know is going to piss people off, you have to be able to take some hits coming back. And the one thing I will say is, as I've always said, I fully respect him for playing the villain role. I would much rather him do the Instagram caption, like, you live long enough, you become the villain. I much would rather have him do that than give, like, a heartfelt thank you or apology to Michigan for leaving. Like, just be the villain. So I will respect him for that. And obviously next year it's on. If I yell obscenities at my TV if he misses a tackle, like, that's just part of the game. He knows that, and he's going to be on the other side, probably talking smack to all of his players. So I'm more curious, you guys, like, your thoughts when you saw it happen. What you guys feel as Michigan State fans? Are you embracing him, or is it almost like he's like a Russian spy, and you need to feel him out, make sure he's not some plant from Jim Harbaugh to get all the plays next year? I don't know, maybe. And then cover that and then go to the actual football. Like, do you think he's going to start in Michigan State? Just curious.
I think he should compete for a starting spot because Michigan State lacks linebacker depth. So
Okay.
He definitely has a chance to come in and start. Number 2, I love how much it is bothering Michigan fans. I think it's hilarious to watch it. And the quote he put, because Grant butchered it a little bit, you either die a hero or live long enough to be the villain. So, I mean, I think it's awesome that he's playing the villain card. I don't know if he's going to be good. I don't really care about that. I just love how much it's bothering Michigan fans, and I hope it leads to his brother committing to Michigan State, who just got an offer from Clemson. So let's bring in his brother, use him for his brother, and then just keep bothering Michigan fans and live rent-free in their head. It's great. I love it.
But before Evan goes, wouldn't you also be a little bit rattled or have some thoughts if a Michigan State player bounced and went to Michigan?
Last year it happened, so
It
didn't really
What
care.
would you feel?
Because it didn't blow up like this, obviously. No one talked about it. And his dad was a coach at Michigan, so it made more sense. But didn't bother me.
Evan?
Here am I talking about Twitter again. There's some nasty people on Twitter.
Yeah.
Degrading he is an adult, degrading him in his decisions and his future life decisions. But I think it's good for the rivalry. I know some players said some things that might come back at him on the Michigan side. And then I think the Michigan State players were having fun with it too. They were quote tweeting it saying, if you can't beat them, join them. So, I mean, it's all fair in the rivalry. It intensifies the rivalry I think it's on Halloween, October 31st in Spartan Stadium. So get ready for that. And like Alex's point, it adds depth at linebacker. And I think he's like 6'3", 6'4". I don't know if he 100% fits our linebacker scheme, but I can see him as like an edge rusher coming off the edge. Then obviously special teams, because Michigan State has one of the worst special team units in the country.
Yeah, he should definitely be able to at least help out there. He's a big guy. You said weight room hero. The only thing that makes me feel a little bit better is as I try to think about when a player's gone in the Michigan State, Ohio State circle to the rival school after already being there, it's usually not a premier player that makes a massive difference. Like for Michigan, Andrew Dockich went to Ohio State in basketball, didn't change anything crazily. I would say VanSumeren can make more of an impact on Michigan State's roster. He's not terrible, so it could make an X's and O's impact. I will say, I think Mike Barrett's tweet was hilarious and towed the line perfectly. Because like I said, like at the end of the day, you don't want to attack someone like in a vicious way on Twitter over a decision like this. Because at the end of the day, it's a business decision. He has to make that decision for his future. But it is, like I said, it's fair. You're going to catch some heat, and he knows that going in. That's why he played the villain card and why I respect it. But just the way Mike Barrett worded, like "brah poo" anyway, is like the funniest way to go, like to make your point that you really don't care that he's leaving and that you think he stinks anyways. Like it wasn't mean. It was just almost like childish, which in a way is like hilarious. And I guess you'd hope it came from a player that's decent like Mike Barrett and not some bench warmer. So like Mike Barrett probably knows better than other defensive players if they're going to miss him or not. Yeah, interesting. Again, it goes back to another storyline of Evan. Like linebackers are leading Michigan in the boatload, and which is interesting because their new defensive coordinator is a linebacker-specific coach. So something's going on there. I will say though, it's a shame for Ben that he's going to be on the wrong side of the rivalry game back-to-back years. I mean, that's like a Marion Hossa type move in the NHL. You just don't want to be on the wrong side of the rivalry game back-to-back years. So that's going to stink for him. But other than that, like it shook up the rivalry a little bit. Got people talking before the biggest basketball game of the year about the rivalry game, which is always fun.
I'm just gonna let you have your jab. But
okay.
Just remember who won last year, and
I do.
And who's won 9 out of the 13 years. So you just keep that in the back of your mind, and then Brapu anyways, you know.
Brapu anyways. Someone needs to make a sign for next year's game or a shirt with that. That's just such a funny tweet. Okay, next college football topic. Last one. Something quick here. Fan questions pouring in. I mean, there's so many, it's hard to cipher through all of them. I try to say that with a straight face. But this week we have two. The second one's going to end the show. Jason from Instagram. Appreciate it. He wants to know our way too early college football top 5 Heisman candidates. So last week we did our top 5 teams, too early rankings. Now more specific. Had to go in the weeds a little bit more just to know who's coming back. Top 5 Heisman candidates. Does anyone want to go first, or do you want to do the same order where I did, then you did, then Evan did?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, top 5. In no order, like I did last week. Spencer Rattler, DJ Ukulele, Sam Howell, Derek King, and Keaton Slovis.
That's it?
All QBs. Super exciting, Grant. Great stuff.
Quarterback award, so mine's all QBs too.
Well, Devontae Smith, who the Lions are going to draft.
Other than that.
X.
Bryce Young.
Okay.
Spencer Rattler,
okay.
Sam Howell, DJ Ukulele, and JT Daniels from Georgia.
Oh.
I have Spencer Rattler, Sam Howell, Keaton Slovis, JT Daniels, and Breece Hall, running back for Iowa State.
Nice. Good. I'm glad I've been through in a running
Good job,
back.
Evan.
That's good stuff.
Thanks, man.
So what, the Spencer Rattler was unanimous, Howell was unanimous. I think that's about the only two.
Do you have Ukulele?
No.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, I guess. I don't want to stand here too long, but the Ukulele and Bryce Young making their starts on those two massive programs. Be interesting to see what happens there. I'm glad you put Bryce Young because I looked at him on the odds chart of who was most favored, and I was like, he's up there high, but I've never seen him play, so it's tough to throw someone in that. Derek King, though, playing Michigan State, if that game stays scheduled, that should be exciting, but also a nightmare for Michigan State's defense because he is awesome. Miami! Is MLive's Michigan State basketball reporter, Kyle Austin. Thanks for joining us tonight, Kyle.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So we want to start off giving some background on you for the people that listen to this show. So could you walk us through, the general tell us about yourself question of your background, kind of your college experience, and how you got to where you are now as a sports journalist?
Sure. So originally from Kalamazoo, so grew up in the state, kind of around the whole sports scene. Went to Syracuse University for college, where you'll find a lot of journalists went. Braved the cold up there for 4 years. So did a lot of student newspaper, Syracuse basketball, covered them, Boeheim, the old Big East, had a lot of fun doing that for 4 years. And then came to MLive pretty soon after that and kind of worked my way up. I was in Saginaw for a couple years doing high school sports and some other stuff. Ann Arbor for a couple years doing high school sports, and then moved up here. I guess it's been coming up on 7 years now. So doing Michigan State basketball. So been a nice ride.
Yeah, I'd seen that. So you joined MLive as the Michigan State basketball reporter in 2014, correct?
Yeah, 2014. So it was right after the heartbreaking UConn loss there in the 2014 season.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Tough. Yeah, background too. I'm the Michigan fan of the podcast, and Alex and Evan are 2 Michigan State fans.
Okay.
Too. Yeah. Before we get into Michigan State basketball, I want to touch on too. You mentioned Syracuse. I was just curious. I myself went to Butler University in Indianapolis.
Okay.
In their communications department, and I was just curious, how intense is the communications school at Syracuse? Like you said, all the talent they produce. What was that like there for 4 years?
There was definitely a lot of talent there. I found the intensity a little bit more on the student newspaper side of it. Just that's really what I got into. But yeah, I mean, a lot of good sports writers there. A lot of kind of competition to kind of move up and cover the key beats. Like I think I was there 3 years before I got to do write anything about men's basketball. You know, I wrote about swimming and diving and all sorts of minor sports, and it was really kind of a farm system. But it was great at the same time because there are a lot of people who really wanted to get better. Kind of a lot of camaraderie. And, you know, I look at it now and, you know, I got people I worked with who were at, you know, The Athletic, The Wall Street Journal, Sports Illustrated, all sorts of places. So really a good situation to be in to be young and get better.
Sounds like a good time. So without further ado, we'll get to what we brought you on for, Michigan State basketball, because this show has been needing someone to steer us towards the end of Michigan State season that knows more than we do. Little inside knowledge.
I'll try.
So our first question, because it's been a storyline the last couple weeks on the show, is after the Indiana win, where do you see, and you can go, you know, big picture, a percentage range, but we're trying to figure out what are MSU's chances for making the tournament, because us three disagree on it and we've been all kind of the board. So how do you see their chances to make the big dance?
I see it as like 5%. I would put it at. I know they played well against Indiana. That was good. I have a hard time seeing a whole lot of wins in that closing stretch for them. You got Michigan twice, you got Illinois, you got Ohio State. Even the way they played at Indiana, I have a hard time seeing them winning any of those games. And, you know, the hole they put themselves in, they need wins like that. So they got 6 wins left. I think you'd have to win at least 4 of them to go in the Big Ten tournament with any sort of shot. And that's probably being a little bit generous as it is. I'm trying not to get suckered in too much by one decent half, because they played terrible to start the game too. And you know, they still have point guard issues. I think they got hot. They finally hit a couple of shots. So I'm probably a little more pessimistic than a couple of you guys, at least. I've had some people at Michigan State kind of make the case for me, and I do think the Big Ten, it being so good, does open the door for a little bit more margin for error. Like I think you could be below 500 in the Big Ten record, and they'll be a below 500 team as far as conference record get in. So they definitely still have a path without winning the Big Ten tournament. I think I don't see them getting the wins that they need based on how I've seen this team play all year.
Evan, is that tough to hear?
It is, since I'm the one that thinks we have a good chance to get in. I guess I would say, to kind of point off of what you said, do you see any games or highlight any of the couple games that are the most winnable games left on the schedule?
I mean, you can definitely beat Indiana again. I think they match up okay with Illinois. I certainly wouldn't pick them to beat Illinois on Tuesday, but I really like that small lineup they played against Indiana with Aaron Henry at the 4. I think that had a lot of good spacing, a lot of good shooting. You had 3 ball handlers, so you kind of solved your point guard issue a little bit. And Indiana's really the only team I think you can, or Illinois, is the only team I think you can really play that lineup a decent amount against, because they're going to go 4 guards. You're going to have AO kind of is one of those guys, and I think Aaron Henry can take him on. So I just think matchup wise, you can do okay with them, but I have a hard time. Any team that's got multiple good bigs, I think they're pretty dead in the water against right now, as far from what I've seen. So Michigan and Ohio State, I think they'd have a hard time against. But you upset Illinois, you get a little momentum. Who knows? But I have a hard time seeing it.
Yeah, that was a good lead-in because we did want to touch a little bit on previewing that game because we'll release this tomorrow during the day, so people will be able to listen to it before the game. Besides the small ball lineup, I was reading your 5 thoughts going into the Illinois game coming up. So I was curious about the decision that the coaching staff is going to have to make with doubling their big man Kofi Coburn, because as we'd seen in past games, Tracy Jackson Davis just had a career high against them, and Trevion Williams had given them some fits. Do you anticipate that they will try doubling, or is it too risky with Illinois' 3-point shooters?
I think they're done doubling for the year. Because we talked to Tom Izzo today, and he's not giving away his hand, but it's basically you can give up a 2 or you can give up a 3, and 3 is worth more than 2s, right? It's come down to basic math for them at this point. And you look at some of their decisions. Look at the Iowa series; they play them twice. I don't know why they changed tactics between games, but the first game they kind of let Luka do what he wanted. He had. One of you guys might know, I forget, he had a lot of points in that first game, but they almost win. They have a shot to tie the game in the last 30 seconds. Second game, for whatever reason, they doubled him more. They gave up a few more open 3-pointers, and they just get torched, and they lose by 30. So I think that was kind of eye-opening. And then Indiana, like you said, Trace Jackson Davis, 34 points, but they win. So I think the smarter game plan for this team right now is to you play a big man like a Kofi or anybody like that. I think you let them get their points, and you live with them getting 30 if they have to get 30. But if you can keep a team to 5 3-pointers or 4 3-pointers, I think you're in the game, and I think that's the better shot for these guys right now than giving up the 3-pointers. They don't have a good enough defense to do both. Really, you got to pick one. There have been years where, last year Xavier Tillman could take on a lot of these dudes one-on-one and at least hold them down, and they don't have that right now. So I think there's 2 bad options to pick basically, and I think they're better off letting the big man score 30 on them. I think that's where they're at right now.
Yeah, that was similar to what you said, Alex, earlier when you were talking about you didn't think they would probably double again after what Iowa did to them. So it's kind of similar there.
I do have one question kind of along those lines. Is there a player on Michigan State that you'd say is the key to the game and the key to having a run here to get into the tournament other than Aaron Henry?
It's going to sound weird because he didn't put up many stats, but I thought Rocket Watts looked a lot better against Indiana. Just more comfortable out there. He only scored 6 points, but 0 turnovers in 32 minutes to me for him was huge. I just thought he defended better. He looked more comfortable. And boy, if you can even get like serviceable point guard play out of him, nothing spectacular. I think he got caught up trying to be Cassius Winston and got himself tripped up a little bit too much this year. And if he can just be a decent point guard who's going to not turn the ball over and make plays every now and then and make good passes, that would just be huge for them at this point. And even playing like he did at Indiana, if they get that down the stretch, that's a huge boost. Because that's been problem number 1 for them for me, which is not having any sort of serviceable point guard. So I would take that. I've been waiting. I'm sure like you guys have been waiting all season for Joey Howard to look like this player we've been hearing. If he can start becoming a 3-point shooter, that would help too. But I think Rocket looking like he knows what he's doing out there, point guard would be huge for them.
So we'll see how that game plays out. Certainly their biggest games of the season so far. We briefly wanted to ask you while you were on about the future for Michigan State basketball. Actually, before that, I want to get to a question about this year. Again, a bigger picture. We were curious here. Do you feel, or have you gotten the sense being around the team, asking questions, that Coach Izzo and the team feel any sort of added pressure to make the tournament, given the long tournament streak the program has had?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's hard because like the tournament streak is very important to Tom Izzo, And he's going to downplay it right now because he doesn't want to make these kids feel bad. He doesn't want to give them added pressure. But the fact is that the streak is it's right up there as far as the things he's most proud of. It's pretty close up there to his national title. It's pretty close up there to the Final Fours because he likes being consistent. He likes being a team that's there every year. You look at the list of longest NCAA tournament streaks and longest current ones. He's right up there with Duke and Kansas, and those are the type of short lists that he likes to be on, and it kind of puts him in that blue blood territory. I think that he's always kind of striving to be in. So I think they know, even if he's not saying it right now, I think they know how important it is to him. And yeah, that is added pressure to them, and they'll be honest and they say, it's not something that's keeping us up at night, but it is something that they think about, and I think it's. Israel's in a weird place because I don't think he's not shoving that down their throats. He knows that this has been a tough year for players. I mean, they've been daily tested. They haven't been able to see their families. They go through the COVID shutdown in January, and a lot of programs have done that, but not a whole lot in the Big Ten. So I think they had it maybe a little bit tougher. So I think he's trying to tell them that, it's okay, do your best. It's not the end of the world. But I think deep down, a lot of these players know that it's meaningful. And, there are a lot of good players that come through here, and you don't want to be that group that breaks the streak. And I think they feel a lot of that sort of pressure right now. And we'll see we'll see if that brings out the best from them or if it kind of gets the better of them. But I can tell you that whether they say it or not, and whether Tom says it or not, it's definitely something big for them right now.
Yeah. Like you said, it's a fine line they got to kind of maneuver towards the end. And with, like you said, with a lot of great players coming through Michigan State, that touches into the upcoming 2021 recruiting class we'll be bringing in. And with even without the speculation of Amani Bates reclassifying, it's still a very highly regarded class. We've talked about our thoughts on players before. I've watched the YouTube highlights you can find. But we're curious from your perspective, is there one player in that class that you're most excited to cover? And if so, why?
Jaden Akins really looks like a guy I think that could play right away. I mean, it's a combination of that's what they need the most right now. They need a good high-level point guard that can come in and score and run an offense. And it's certainly different doing it in college and in high school. I'm not going to sit here and say that I have a ton of confidence that he's going to be a great day one point guard, but he looks like he has the skills. So I think between him having the skills and the opportunity, I think as far as next year, he's the guy that I'm looking forward to the most. Max Christie seems like, obviously he's got all the skills to do it. I think Pierre Brooks is going to end up being a good long-term player for them. I'm not sure he's going to be the best year one guy, but he's a guy I could definitely see having the best, longer-term career. So I like them all for different reasons, but Akins, from what I've seen, just how electric he is, how well he scores the ball, how well he seems to be able to see the court, that and the fact that they need a guy like that so bad right now, that combination kind of has me looking at him the most.
Yeah, I think we'd all echo that. I remember when Alex and I had watched his early tape, it was very impressive. I think his the speed he has and the ability to stop on a dime and pull up from the elbow for a mid-range jumper is very impressive. So I think he's definitely going to be exciting to watch. Let's move to a little bit more fun miscellaneous questions here. We're curious, what has been your favorite memory covering MSU basketball?
Oh, favorite memory. I mean, the Final Fours are fun. You go into that first tournament. Gosh, what were they that 2015 year? Were they a 7 seed that year?
Yeah,
you go into your first tournament, and you don't know what you're doing. Your first year doing this. I've reported before, but it's doing your first NCAA tournament. You have no really no idea what you're doing, and to be thrown into that and end up covering a team that goes on a run, and all of a sudden you're covering a team that's everyone's talking about. Magic Johnson's there. You're talking to him. You end up going to the Final Four, and it just how much you learn quickly, how much of a whirlwind it turns out to be. That was going to stick out. Not a lot of people get to cover a college basketball team, step on the beat, and go to a Final Four in the first year. So that was certainly a lot of fun.
Yeah, you got your feet wet early there. This is a selfish one because my sophomore year at Butler, I covered the men's basketball team and just had some more geeking out on sports journalism in general. That feeling, like I remember having to ask when you have to ask a coach a tough question, especially I was thinking about your role as Coach Izzo is a passionate guy, and that can either be positive sometimes or can be angry in others. Have you ever had to ask Coach Izzo a tough question, maybe after a game that made you nervous to ask, and if so, what was that question?
So yes, there've actually been there've been a lot, because you look at since 2014 since you've been here, and they have all the sexual assault stuff, which you had to ask some tough questions with that as far as what were you involved with. I remember one in particular though. It wasn't the sexual assault stuff. It was if you guys remember when Miles Bridges briefly got in that NCAA trouble, with his mom had met with an agent, so Yahoo had this story, and Tom Izzo came up briefly that he had met with Christian Dawkins, who was the agent runner involved, and that's not against the rules, but the fact that Tom Izzo is known to be associated with this guy who's at the middle of it warranted a question. So I remember it was a game at Wisconsin afterwards, and I asked him, and he kind of cut me off. He knew what was going on, and he said, I'm allowed to have dinner with him, and kind of got short with me, which, I mean, like, it comes with the territory. You guys have done it, and any of you guys that have done this, sometimes that has to happen. And to Izzo's credit, afterwards, I remember coming out of the locker room, and I'm going back to work, and I hear someone call me from behind. I look around, and it's Tom, and I come over here. So I go over there, and Tom doesn't really apologize very often, but he did probably the closest, which is like, he's like, I know you got to ask that question, and I gotta, I'm not a fan of it, and kind of explains himself. And I said, I know where you're coming from, so I'll give him that. I'll say that a lot of times, yes, it can get a little testy in press conferences, but a lot of times it's there's other conversations that you have to, and it gets smoothed over. I'll tell you, I was always more nervous covering Boeheim, because Boeheim would snap at you worse. If you guys ever seen him interviewed or on TV, he'd snap at you worse. And being a student covering him, that was more of an education. Tom and I can get along just fine.
Yeah, you didn't. I guess you didn't turn into that student reporter that got a Coach K snap back at him, and that kind of made the rounds on Twitter too. So I could see how that'd be kind of scary talking to Coach Boeheim as a student. Yeah,
it was, and You guys probably don't remember this, but there was an incident where somebody at the student newspaper wrote that Jerry McNamara was overrated. He wrote this whole column, and Jerry McNamara, their best player at the time, and Boeheim devoted like most of a press conference at one point to yelling at like a student reporter in front of everybody. So stuff like that is in your mind. And Izzo, to his credit, he's very nice to students, so I'll give him that. If a professional journalist asks him something he doesn't appreciate, he'll let you know, and that's fine. That's part of the job. But he treats students well, so I'll give him that.
So another journalism-specific question. What is your game recap process? And I asked that because I remember just in the lone year that I covered the team, I remember thinking like halfway through the conference schedule, it was so tough to not be repetitive in what you're writing post-game. And then along that line of not being repetitive is like your flow. Because I think a lot of people don't realize that reporters are sometimes almost finished with their story by the final whistle, depending on the game, or they have an idea. Because like look at the Indiana game, for example. In the first couple minutes, you think maybe the article might be it's the end of Michigan State's season, chances to make the tournament, and then they have a great second half, score a lot of points, and the story completely changes. So I'm just fascinated by the overall process you have when it comes to recapping games.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. It's probably the most difficult thing you do, especially, I mean, depending on the game. If that Iowa game at home, that one wasn't too hard because the outcome of that was pretty determined pretty early on. But a lot of them, like that Purdue game when Travion hit the shot, that took a lot of rewriting there at the end. But basically anything important that happens, I try to get it down. I mean, I had somebody once say to me, the important thing is to get something out. You can't be there at the end of the game with a blank screen. looking at you, because that's when you're gonna choke. So anytime something that seems like important happens, get it down. Important play, describe it. Important sequence, get that kind of described. So I kind of have what I kind of think of as building blocks, on there. I'll have different kind of sections, whether it's an important, what happened in the first half, or this important stretch in the second half, or a lineup change. I'll have some stuff about, and then you kind of end up piecing it together at the end, because by the end of a game, some of that stuff ends up being kind of more important. Maybe some of it ends up being less important. And then one thing I always try to do too, and this is to your point about being repetitive, because it's true, it certainly can be repetitive. I always try to, in my mind, take a step back and say, okay, what's the bigger picture here? And make sure that I put it into context. I had someone describe beat writing to me once as, try to think like you're writing a book about the season, and every game is kind of a chapter, so make sure that what happened last, what is going to happen next. Make sure that, you're putting it all in context, obviously if they're on a 5-game losing streak, you're going to mention that, but you're right after the Indiana game, and you mentioned they get a win going into a very tough closing stretch of the season, and they're on the bubble. And I think that's how you kind of make everyone unique, is you make sure, why does this game matter? Where does this game fit into the bigger picture? And it's kind of hard to do that in the middle of the game, because it's, you're taking notes and who hit that shot and who got that steal, but you kind of have to remember to take a step back and say, okay, why does this game matter? What is this game's role in kind of the bigger picture of this season? And it's hard to get all that in a game story. And I certainly write good ones and bad ones, like I'm sure all my colleagues do. But it's definitely one of the more fun and nerve-wracking parts of the job, is getting that story out right after a game's over.
Yeah, I like that book analogy, though. That kind of gives a bigger picture of how you view it.
Mm-hmm.
So only a few more left here, and then we'll let you go. Just out of curiosity, because beat writing, beat reporting, you're just inundated with Michigan State basketball left and right. We were just curious, what is Kyle Austin's escape from MSU basketball? Are there any other sports that you dive into that you don't have to worry about the X's and O's, or any hobbies that you use when you just need to get away from reporting for a little bit?
It's funny. You guys might know it's better knowing journalism, but people who don't know anything about journalism think that I like to sit around and watch sports all day, which I do sometimes, but a lot of times, you're right. It's like you said, it's like, that's the job. So when I'm not doing the job, sometimes I want to do something completely different. If I have sports on, I do watch other college basketball, but if I have sports on, it's probably golf, which is just kind of my escape. I like to play and watch it. So if I have something on besides basketball, it's probably that. But honestly, in the evenings, like, I'm reading a lot. I read a lot of history, stuff like that. My wife and I will binge watching TV, probably like a lot of other people. But a lot of times it's like, yeah, if I covered a game last night and I spent the whole day writing about basketball, or I talked to Tom Izzo and wrote about it, it's like, yeah, maybe I don't want to spend my whole evening watching basketball. There are people that do, God love them. They're probably more into it than me, but it's different when it's your job. I say that.
Gotcha. That's fascinating. All right, so our last one, and we just want to see if you're on the same page, because we've talked. Alex turned me on to this stat, or his idea, his theory, and now I watch more Michigan State games, as a season. I see the same thing. He's under the impression that it seems like Michigan State is due for a minimum of 2 moving screen calls a game. Do you feel this way at all when you cover the team, and it's been going on for years, and we just can't figure out why it happens? It just seems to be a repetitive theme in every Michigan State game.
Yeah, they probably get more than most. It's funny. I notice it because if you guys, I don't know how many beat writers you follow, if you know Brendan Quinn at all, of The Athletic, he hosts a podcast called Moving Screen. So his joke every time there's a moving screen is that they're promoting his podcast for him. So I notice moving screens now because it's kind of become a beat writer joke. But there's one. I feel like there were less last year because Xavier Tillman knew how to set a screen really well. So probably less this year, but it seems like Kithier doesn't really know how to set a screen as well. He moves through some of them a lot more. Yeah, I see some of you guys agreeing with me, and some of the younger guys just haven't gotten there yet. So yes, more than I don't track it. I can't say that I do, but just anecdotally, yes, I would think that Michigan State probably gets a couple more.
Well, good to get some confirmation there for Alex.
Feels good.
All right, so I believe that's all we had, unless you guys had any other last-minute ones for him.
I just have one. So
go ahead.
Syracuse basketball fan, I assume. How is that with the up and downs of Syracuse basketball?
It is life on the bubble. I swear to God, that program, every single year you go into the tournament and it's on the bubble. And it's weird because it's like, I still think like a journalist, but I'm like half fan too. So I'm kind of like in both worlds with them. And yeah, it's weird. Like I was just telling someone earlier today, it's like, I'd almost rather them get really bad and like make a change, and I'm such a fan now. Like I'm against the head coach, he's like in the Hall of Fame, but it's like they're in this middle ground now where it's like they're not good enough to go like win an ACC title, win a national championship, but they're not bad enough to like make a change. And Boeheim's just going to stay there until he's 100. So yes, it's my wife is super into Syracuse basketball, so I watch them a lot, and they get very frustrated because I feel like they should be like a top 3 or 4 big ACC team regularly, and they're just stuck in the middle class there somehow. And it's probably me just being an alum that I feel like they should be better than they are. But I don't envy. I get sick of watching the bubble talk with them every year. I wish one year they would just get in the tournament and be good. Although Michigan State fans know very well. Obviously, that it seems like they can get into the tournament, and all these teams have to prepare on short notice against that zone. And if you haven't played it, they eke out a Final Four run every couple of years when they're not that good, which I think is just because of the zone, and it's hard to prepare against in the tournament. So then I think they look a little better than they are. But I mean, it's still fun to follow a team that's on national TV and in the tournament every now and then. But yes, I think they should be better than they are. Short.
Yeah, I don't know why it just dawned on me when Alex asked that question. You covered the game in the tournament. What was that experience like? Was that a highlight of the career, or was it kind of interesting going in?
It was a little strange. Like my wife was double excited. She this is going to sound like blasphemy to a lot of Michigan State fans, but she likes when Michigan State loses in the tournament because I'm basically on the road for a month. We have 2 small children, so she likes it when the tournament run ends, and it helps that she's not a Michigan State fan. So for her, it was like, oh, Kyle's done covering the tournament, and State won, and Syracuse won, and so yes, it was very strange because everyone at Michigan State's very disappointed, and my wife's texting me all excited, and I have to kind of balance the two. It was a very strange weekend for me.
Yeah, that's like a yin yang situation there.
Yeah.
All right, well, we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and wanted to shout out. So you can follow Kyle's work at mlive.com, and your Twitter account is at KyleBAustin if you want to follow along with Kyle's work. Like we said, we really appreciate you coming on and shedding some light on Michigan State's basketball season.
Hey, thanks, guys. This was fun.
Thank you, Kyle.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Have a great night.
Yeah.
Time to meet and greet the Ballers, representing the Detroit Pistons.
All right.
Let's jump right into it. Are we trading Jerami Grant?
All right, our third topic today, the Detroit Pistons. What?
You didn't want to go with my awesome introduction?
No. You know, that one show we need to let Alex host and see what his transitions would be like.
Yeah,
But for now, mine aren't super exciting. And, I don't have the greatest lead-ins or transitions, as they say in the business. But anyways, the Detroit Pistons. Hat tip on this one, I was driving on Friday evening for a ski trip. Shout out the Fresh Pow Pow this weekend at Cabernet Peaks. It was absolutely incredible. When my mom listens to this, I don't want her to get nervous, but my car was struggling to get to Cadillac, Michigan. But I digress. The beginning of my trip was filled with the beautiful sounds of 97 Won the Tickets, the Mike Valeni show featuring Enrico Beard. And Mike Valeni, a Boston Celtics fan, which is why I think he's so intrigued by it, was discussing the possibility of the Pistons trading Jerami Grant before the deadline this year. Now, if you had told a Pistons fan at the start of the season that was going to be the case, I think most people would be like, I don't know. I mean, they just signed him to a 3-year, $20 million a year contract. Are they going to be looking to move him this fast? Because he's basically been on the Pistons for a cup of coffee, like 30 games. So it's interesting to think, is it the right move? We're all going to put on our GM caps, put one on Evan, put one on Alex, GM caps. And would you, as Mr. Troy Weaver, trade Jerami Grant? And then the bigger picture is, if you are, what do you need to get back, Mr. Weaver? One.
My first thought when hearing this question was
It's wild.
no brainer. Let's trade him.
Really?
Then I realized how long it's been since Michigan State, jeez.
Oh, right.
Still stuck in the college basketball discussion. The Pistons, how long it's been since they've had a really good player.
Blake Griffin.
No, like a 3 and D kind of guy.
I know what you're saying. He's more than a 3 and D. Don't disrespect him. But
yes,
I know
he's an elite level 3 and D, if that makes sense.
A playmaking small forward / power forward. Sure.
Do you want to be the GM right now, or do you want me to go?
But you just insulted Jerry Grant by calling him a 3
wasn't
and D.
done. Anyways, he's the best player the Pistons have probably had, which is small sample size. Yes, I know, but maybe since Chauncey Billups has been that bad for the Pistons.
Jason Maxiell?
No. Sorry.
Rodney
Jason.
Stuckey?
Sorry, Rodney.
Will Bynum?
No. He's been that good.
Ben Gordon?
Troy
Villanueva?
That worked out. Those worked out
Those are
really
so
well.
bad.
Josh Smith, actually.
Josh Smith?
Yeah. No. So he's been very, very, very good. Elite. Okay? So I was thinking, wow, the Pistons took them this long to get someone good again, and now they're just going to dump him? And then I circled back to Troy Weaver can identify talent. He identified Jerami Grant. Josh Jackson's reemergence. Plenty of other players on the team have looked much better than the Pistons have in the past. So, with how good Jerami Grant has been, you could probably get a haul, draft picks, 2 first-rounders, and young talent. And with Troy Weaver's ability to identify talent, I think it's probably a no-brainer to move on from Jerami Grant because you can build a full team by trading him. If you keep him, you have to build around him, and it will take longer to really get all that talent. So I'd say trade him.
Mr. Weaver, number 2.
I would say this year, no. I would say hold on to him for this trade deadline.
Wow.
Because there's other rumors going around for other players on the team, like Blake Griffin. He won't get traded, but a buyout situation.
Mm-hmm.
And now DeLon Wright. I've been seeing trade rumors for DeLon Wright. You're not going to get a lot for him, but I think it's another piece that you can move. I would keep Jerami Grant for like Alex said, a talented player on the roster, somebody with veteran presence, and somebody that you can go to get the ball to for next year. Now, I'm all for trading him next year. That way you're not trading him in the 3rd year. So that would be like his last year of his contract where you're not going to get as much because other teams are going to see him as just a asset just for the playoff run. So I see for next year, and kind of going back to your question, what you want in return, I don't know the market for Jerami Grant. I think it's all about how bad does somebody want him, or are there multiple teams requesting the trade, because then the price will go up. But this article that you linked us has 2 first-round picks and 3 players for him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Marcus Smart, valuable minutes for Boston. He's kind of a role guy. Carson Edwards, kind of a bench backup point guard. Mm-hmm. And then Aaron Naismith, I don't know who he is. But the 2 first-round picks kind of sticks out to me because from the draft that Weaver had this past year, you kind of like your chances of hitting on at least one of them. So going back to your question, I would say a no to a trade this year, but I'm all open ears next year.
Kind of surprising considering Evan's track record of being the guy that likes to accumulate capital. But I respect it. It shows that he's not – he puts thought into it and he values each situation at a time. He's not just like, boop, nope, trade him. I want draft picks. So he's fair. Alex, did you have something to say? Or
I wanted to add one thing.
Yeah.
Just for some perspective on this market.
Yes.
So Tobias Harris, similar type of player, but I would say Jerami Grant's probably a little better.
Yeah.
They got,
depending on the season,
in the Tobias Harris trade with Clippers and Sixers,
mm-hmm.
they got 2 firsts, 3 players, and 2 seconds. They added in Boban Marjanovic and Mike Scott, but still they got 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and players. So, I mean, that's a pretty big haul. Yeah. I think that you could get something similar for Jerami Grant.
Yeah. As painful as it is to admit this, I really, really, really like Jerami Grant. I do think the Pistons need to look to move on from him, but it has to be for the right price. I'm open to waiting until next year, like Evan said. I did write down you cannot wait till the 3rd year to do it because I just think you're not going to get as much. And the question actually sparked an interesting thought. I always hear about, is the player in their prime? Are they in their prime? Are they digressing? Are they progressing? So he's 26 right now, and I just Googled, what is considered the NBA player's prime age? Because I think it's like it slowly feels like it's getting younger and younger as all this young talent is good right away. Google will still tell you, one place said it's 27 years old, one said it's from 26 to 31, that gap, which I think is fair because like Steph Curry was pretty good at 29 and 30, still great now in his 30s. So Jerami Grant could still be good for you, into his early 30s. He's a more athletic player, so there could be more wear and tear on the body there. I don't know, but what they do with him, I will say, is going to be very, very interesting, and you'll know clearly where maybe Troy Weaver's head's at about the near future, because if the Pistons are on like a projected pace of a rebuild, they land Cade Cunningham, they land a top 3 pick this year, there is a world where you add a player like that, or Jalen Suggs, and they play shooting guard or point guard a little bit, and Killian Hayes is back healthy, and you have Sadiq Bey and Jerami Grant in the center, and you're making the playoffs in the East. You could, if that draft pick in the top 3 is good as they're supposed to be. Then there's a world though where you try it and you're still not good, and then on year 3 you're like, what do we do with Jerami Grant? We're not going to pay him like 3 more years till he's like 34, and we're not getting as much back. So my gut says you sell him, and then like you said, like you mentioned, I think you got to get 2 first-round picks. They don't have to be in the same year because not many teams have that. You spread them out. And then you take, hopefully, a couple of young shots projects like a Josh Jackson-type player that's been thrown away by a team, like Dennis Smith Jr. No big contracts you don't take on back unless you're getting a ton of picks, and see what you have. Because, and it also, it depends on what they think about this upcoming draft class. Like some people think it's deep. Some people will tell you there's no premier NBA player in this draft. So it depends on what they see in scouting, whether or not you really want more picks in this draft. But if you trade him and then you have you're going to have like a crazy rock solid young core of players that 2 to 3 of them are going to have to hit and be like very good NBA players, you would think, based on where they're going to be picking. And also ensures like Jerami Grant's going to win you a couple games this year that you're going to be uncomfortable winning based on how bad the Timberwolves are. So if you get rid of him, then it almost guarantees you're probably going to get the first pick. So it's really tough. I mean, this would be one that would keep me up at night if I was Troy Weaver, but there really is something to be said for getting rid of him at his absolute peak. It's like selling a stock. You sell when he's at his highest, and he's coming off a 43-point game a week or so ago, and is probably going to be an all-star. A team like the Celtics like really need him if they're trying to win now, and they have a lot of draft picks, and they have a lot of young players that they're probably willing to get rid of. So that might be the place. And again, I don't know if Jerami Grant's ever going to be the guy to carry the Pistons to a championship as the guy in the NBA. He would need a supporting cast, which you might be able to build for him, but will it be too late by then?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily envy Troy Weaver's job, but it'd be very fun to try to figure out. So we'll see. But I've made a good point that you can definitely probably expect like a Wayne Ellington type player to be moved, DeLon Wright to potentially be moved, because DeLon Wright has been balling out. So there's going to be teams that need him. Problem with the trading that now is the Pistons point guard situation is so terrible, injury depraved. What I mean? They're not bad, but they're just depraved. They can't afford to almost like trade DeLon Wright and all these people. They got to bring in some more assets. So you need some young point guard players back in the trade.
Is DeLon Wright injured right now?
Yeah, he did get hurt now. So That's not going to help. But there's still some time to trade deadline, and he's been very good. And especially if you look at like sweaty advanced stats, he's like one of the most efficient players on the Pistons right now. Like arguably like one of their best players. So that's all for the Pistons. We'll move on to our last segment of the show. As I teased earlier, a fan question again from Jason on Instagram. Appreciate the lighthearted nature of this one to close out the show, but could get serious. Who knows? People get kind of mad about questions like this sometimes. What is the best Sour Patch Kids flavor?
Red is my favorite. Blue is my Coke favorite.
You always do that with these questions where you have like,
Just
you can't just give one just straight answer.
Red, white, and blue. But there is no white, so just red and blue.
Yeah.
I would say green, but in fairness of this, I'm not a big Sour Patch Kids fan. I don't enjoy them.
Interesting.
I'm a chocolate guy, and so all this gummy and fruity stuff, I'm not a fan of it.
Favorite chocolate?
Just pick a chocolate and I'll eat it.
Anything?
Dark
A
chocolate?
payday?
I love dark chocolate.
You.
Ugh.
What's wrong with you?
Unsub. Just kidding. I had orange. And I'm very passionate about orange being the best flavor like anything when it comes to this. And I just think if you don't think that's the case, then you're wrong. Thankfully, the green isn't a sour apple flavor, because then I'd really be questioning Evan, because I think if you like the sour apple lane and most of that stuff, you're crazy. Same with grape. No, get out of my face with that. Orange is usually the best. Red's also, I respect that. Red's very good. Interesting fact, did a little dive because I was like, I just had to double check. Like, what are, again, like the main considered Sour Patch Kid flavors? Did you know? Put on my like nerd glasses. The first 4 original Sour Patch Kids were orange, red, yellow, and green. And it wasn't until 2014 that they added the blue flavor to the original line. And whoever did that, I think, should be given a massive raise because blue is great. I'm up there with Alex. It's my second. Like, that is such a good flavor to switch it up. Because, like, the other 4, like, really citrusy, like, tropical flavors, and that blue is just, like, a nice, like, blueberry, like, almost like a Hawaiian fruit punch blue flavor. Perfect to, like, offset it all. And Evan kind of answered, we know where he stands on it, but, like, where do you rank Sour Patch Kids in the all-time candy debate? Are they elite tier? Are they good tier? Are they just a movie snack? Where are you putting these in?
I like them a lot until my stomach hurts afterwards, which is typically the case. Can't eat too many of them. So much sugar and sour.
You think specifically for Sour Patch Kids or just
yeah,
all
they
candy?
just no. Sour Patch Kids are a little more upsetting on the stomach than average, I would say.
I feel,
but I love them too.
I feel in most of my teeth. I feel like they are like a cavity. Like I feel a cavity forming when I eat those because of all the coating on them.
Yeah, good though.
Yeah, so Evan, are you like Evan? Like you'll eat them if someone has them out at their house or brings them. Like, oh, I'll take a handful, but you're not buying them at the store ever.
I will never buy them. I'll never grab those first or second. They're not even in my top 10.
They are like, for me, they're the tier of 1 out of every 10 trips to a gas station. I'll pick them up as like my road trip candy. Like I'll be like, yeah, I'll take these, and then but also get like some chips or something to balance it out with the saltiness. They're not like a standalone candy. They're not a movie snack candy for me. They're not elite. They're just like 1 out of every 10 trips to the gas station on a road trip. Sour Patch Kids look good.
Second tier for me.
Definitely not as strong as Sour Skittles. Those things are like torture.
Skittles are dog poop.
Really?
Yeah.
So you would have some, like,
I hate Skittles.
Obviously there's chocolate and then there's the fruity side of candy.
I don't love fruity candy, but I like Sour Patch Kids. Skittles, I think, are terrible.
Wow.
Whoever likes Skittles, you're an unsub.
I will say, for fruity candy, they make like these chewy, gummy nerds on the inside. They're like thicker and they're crunch and they have like a gooey filling. Whew.
Those are good.
Best.
What about Airhead Extremes?
Same vein. Like,
People go crazy over those.
I think just because of the branding. I think like people think they're hard because it says extreme. They're like, oh, look at these. And they're like strips, so people like, I don't know. I think they just brand them well. I think they're trash candy.
Smarties, great candy.
Trash.
No.
Smarties are trash.
No, they're good. Really good.
Trash.
Junior Mints.
Evan, what's your favorite chocolate? You have to have one.
I'm a big M&M's guy. I'm a
Nice.
big Milky Way, Three Musketeers, Snickers. You can't go wrong with a Reese's Cup. But, hot take, I only like Reese's Cups if they're actually in the cups. You give me the Easter eggs or the Christmas tree Reese's Cups, they're trash. I don't want them.
You know why, Evan?
Agreed.
I think I know why. Because they don't have that like little tiny bit of crunch on the outside rim. They're not like crimped, as people would say, on the outside of the Reese's Cup.
I think there's
It's
too
the
much
ratio
going
of
on.
chocolate to peanut butter.
Oh.
The peanut butter is so much greater in them.
Yeah.
Well, I was
So
off then. But to me, they're not, because the Easter eggs are just like a smooth, like baby's bottom outside. They're not like, there's no crunch to it, you know?
I agree. One last thing I need to ask.
Yeah.
Evan, is it a Milky Way or a Milky Way?
It's Milky Way.
Milk or
Wait.
milk?
It's milk. Glass of milk.
With an E. Milk with an E.
It's also my jers.
My
There's
Jersey.
a J in there. My jers.
No.
My
It's
juice.
Meyer.
Hey, that's going around on Twitter. That's popular right now. It's either Meyer or my jers. I always say my jers. I pronounce the J in it.
No, you do
Dude,
not.
every like,
I go to Walmart anyway, so it doesn't even matter.
any like average suburban white 40 to 50-year-old mom says like Myers, Fords, Walmarts. Like, just adds to everything.
Illinois.
Illinois. I'm going to Illinois. You need anything from Myers? I'm running there. It's like, what are we doing? There's no S on that.
Meyer.
And it's not possessive, so let's cut it out.
It's my Jersey.
I'd respect it more if you put the J in. Actually, I like that. They put it in there. It must mean something, right?
And milk. With an E.
You think there's a guy's last name, Meyer? That's probably why it's named.
Yes.
Yes.
What a
he,
selfish person.
he spoke at my college graduation.
Really?
But he's a graduate of Michigan.
Yeah.
Graduated.
I was there.
He's like Ben VanSumeren. He agreed to
As
do
a Michigan State graduate, my speaker was a Michigan graduate.
Ben VanSumeren.
Was I thrilled? Absolutely not.
You really cared?
Kirk Cousins was the year before, so yeah, I do care.
Wow, what a drop off. No offense to the Miser guy, but holy cow. All right, with that, let's wrap up this show. Got to plug our social accounts. Our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram are at ShotOfMS. TikTok is at ShotOfMichiganSports. And then our email is shotofmichigansports@gmail.com. The social accounts are a great way to see clips, video from the show, and interact with comments, likes, DMs, all that. How you can listen to this show, which is, I always feel weird saying that because if you're listening to this, you are listening to the show. So I don't know who I'm really talking to. I guess it's just if you want to listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. It's all audio only, but it's another way to listen to the podcast. We'd appreciate whatever you're listening on to rate it 5 stars and review it on all platforms. And especially if you could share it with a friend to say, hey, these awesome guys talk about Michigan sports and you love Michigan sports, so you should give it a listen. And then lastly, as we say every time, please submit any questions you want answered on the show, and we will filter through them. Alex works around clock filtering out all your questions that flood us every day. And as you see, we will answer them. We're not just pretending. It's not, your questions aren't going into an empty void that isn't seen. We filter through all 1,000 of them every week, and we pick out the best ones. So keep sending those in, and we will answer them.
Ask anything. Doesn't have to be sports related. You could ask about anything.
Candy, life
Lawn
advice.
mowing. Who cares?
How to change a light bulb. College tips.
Evan's pronunciation of milk. Anything you want.
Yep. Episode 6, guys. Cheers as we close it out.
Cheers.
Cheers.
To Jared Goff.
Not again.